Welcome everyone. I won't list everyone by name, but we have lots of distinguished guests. You're all distinguished guests tonight, so thank you for joining us. People from all around Australia and indeed some international visitors, I note, and lots of our previous winners of the Bill Wheeler Award as well. Before I start, I'd like to just go through the acknowledgement of country before we begin our proceedings, just to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands in which the University of Wollongong is situated. We pay our respects to Aboriginal elders, past and present, who are the knowledge holders and teachers. We acknowledge their continued spiritual and cultural connection to country. As we share knowledge, teaching, learning and research within this university, we also pay respect to the knowledge embedded forever within the Aboriginal custodianship of country. So having said that, welcome again to everyone. As I say, we have a very diverse audience. I also know for a fact that there are a number of kids in the background tonight, so welcome to you as well, doing your homeschooling and trying to pick up something extra for Science Week. I've heard that a few of you would be joining in tonight, so a special welcome to all of you. We have a fairly packed program tonight, and we're really honoured to have Bruce Ashford join us to give the special address. Bruce is a surgeon specialising in head and neck surgery. Started his professional life as a dentist, moved on to medicine, progressed through surgical training, and then did a PhD in molecular biology. In addition to his work at the hospital, Bruce has an academic appointment at the university, clinical director of the Illawarra Health and Medical Research Institute, and leads both research and the COVID task force for the health district. So it's a real honour to have Bruce with us tonight. And just before he gives his talk, I think our next slide just puts in context what today's special address is about, and indeed what the whole event is about. Bill Wheeler was an extraordinary character. Bill, we met Bill, and when I say we, I mean Graham Clark and I met Bill in Kiama a number of years ago, and he was very enthusiastic about the possibility of supporting some of the research that we were doing together in medical bionics, and I'm sure others will elaborate on this. Bill went on to organise some fundraising activities. He visited our laboratories a number of times, and those fundraising activities resulted in funds that we were able to launch a fairly innovative program at the time, which was to sponsor PhD students who could really portray their work and the social impact that it would have, and to use the funds awarded to accelerate and progress that social impact. And I think it's been an amazingly successful program. Here's some of the previous winners that we've had. All of them have gone on to do amazing things in science and technology, and particularly in making sure that science and technology has an impact on the communities that we work for. So that's what tonight is all about. It's about celebrating that community involvement in science. It's about celebrating collaboration. We've had collaboration between scientists for quite a long time. In more recent decades, we've realized that scientists also need to collaborate with end users, like clinicians, for example, so that work can be deployed. And we've also come to appreciate the importance of that collaboration with the community in terms of helping us to get it deployed, and making sure that we're doing the right things that they want to have deployed. I should also say right at the start that, and all of these students have commented this year on the impact the Bill Wheeler Award has had on them. We shouldn't underestimate the impact of community support on research and making sure that awards like this happen. It really does have an impact on young researchers, that their research is appreciated, not just by other scientists, but by the communities that we're working for. So speaking of collaboration, I'll come back to our speaker, Bruce Ashford. I've introduced his professional attributes before, but Bruce is also a great collaborator. Not also, I think it's part of being a great contributor in any field these days, is that ability to collaborate that ability to connect. So without any further ado, again, welcome to everyone, a special welcome to Bruce, and I'll hand over to Bruce right now.
Cheers. Thanks very much, Gordon. I hope you can hear me there.
Yep.
I'll just get this up. Just thumbs up if you can see that. Beautiful. Thanks, Gordon, very much for the introduction and for the invite to give this address this year. Probably not as well qualified as the people who've done it before, but you know, we're in the middle of a pandemic. What can we expect? It's a great honour actually to be able to talk to everyone tonight and to really recognise not just in the name of the evening, but in the spirit of the evening as well. Really, the leadership of Bill Wheeler. Here we are. Some years after his passing, we're still talking about him and still recognising this legacy of contribution. Really good example of someone who was not prepared to just silo their engagement with the community. He's a leader across various disciplines and just a good citizen. So he's obviously interested in the development of bionics and with the early iterations of ACES. And a heavy involvement with Kiama Rotary, and really just a legacy of service to the community and community engagement between different and somewhat disparate parts of the community. So, and typically, and particularly tonight, we're thinking about the links between the university and the health sector generally, and the ways in which that has played out over the few years. So I wanted to touch on enabling meaningful engagement tonight, and that is across the community and health or hospital sector and also the university. And I think, first of all, before you can think about where you're going to head and where we want to engage between different parts of the society, it's nice to know where we've come from. I think that Bald Hill, usually it's at the end of a ride, Bald Hill often gives me a good perspective on not only where I've come from, which is just around the corner there, but also where we're going to. And that sort of also goes for each of these elements, goes for the community, goes for the hospital or health sector, as well as the university. So, you know, if we look at even the landscape, we get an idea of where we've come from as a community. We can see the scars of coal in the cliffs, and we can see the stacks and the smoke coming from the steelworks and even the clearing of Bald Hill itself. We can see ships on the horizon. So we've got a sort of a feeling for where we've come from. Even the old road going around the headlands there at on the Seacliff Bridge, with the rocks having fallen on it, just shows a past that we've sort of perhaps learned from over a period of time, and we've been able to innovate and overcome. So where are we now? I think it's a reasonable thing for us to think about, well, where have we come from to get here, and what are the things that have shaped that, and where have we ended up, and what's the current status? And it seems these days that the status changes pretty regularly. So worthwhile then thinking about, well, if that's the current state of play, where are we heading? What's going to look different about this vantage point over a period of time, and what do we need to do to establish ourselves and put ourselves in the best position to progress and to work together across the community sector, the health sector, and the university, and all together, basically for the benefit of the community. So just briefly, my background, you've heard a little bit, started on a pig farm in country Queensland. Somehow managed to scrape together the marks to get to dental school at the University of Queensland. And David Adams, I'm sure, likes the pictures there of the jacarandas and the courtyard. And ultimately spent some time in the military, and that was actually a good thing for me. It taught me a little bit of discipline and gave me an opportunity to think about how, you know, you could engage with different parts of the different parts of the workforce, different parts of society that you wouldn't otherwise do, because I had no history at all in the military, neither did anyone in the family. So I spent a little bit of time doing dentistry, and then ended up ultimately going back to the medical school at Hurston at the University of Queensland to do medicine and to sort of get out of dentistry. I didn't know what to do with all the spare time and cash in dentistry, so I sort of went to do medicine. That then in the military gave me the opportunity to do a few trips overseas. Obviously here you can see I'm in the middle of a market in East Timor. I'm surrounded by, these obviously very dangerous local Timorese children. So I've got to be obviously completely tooled up and have plenty of weapons at hand. Wouldn't want to be caught out of preparedness in that situation. And ultimately, going through surgical training, had the opportunity to go and do a fellowship in Toronto. And this is at Sunnybrook Health Sciences Centre. And opportunity really just to experience a different system and really to see what an academic surgery capability looks like at the University of Toronto. And then finally, here in Wollongong, looking at the start of a new day. This is a Seacliff Bridge from the other direction, thinking about possibilities. And so all of these things, I think, all of our experiences for every individual shape us, just like the community has shaped us, and we in turn shape each other and shape the community that we live in. So my current roles that have sort of turned out to be jack of all trades, and really fair enough to say master of none of these. So I've got a role at the hospital as a surgeon and helping out with research at the local health district. There's a role at the university in the medical school, involved with teaching graduate medical students and with research within surgery. I've got an involvement with the Medical Research Institute as a clinical director, but also that's where I did my PhD. So I'm there as a researcher within the lab of Marie Ranson. And an important role is a professional role just with the College of Surgeons to train future surgeons, and also involved in the examination process. So that's my background. That's everything I say tonight will be a little bit coloured by all of those different experiences. So I'd like to think about how we develop collaborations in 2021. And this is obviously the Wollongong Hospital campus, which occupies a fair bit of my time. And, I'd like to think about what questions should we be asking when we're thinking about developing collaboration. What are the pressing issues that we have in the clinical environment or in the academic or research environment or the manufacturing environment even? What can I or we as a group or a lab or even an institution bring to the table? What do we think our strengths are, and what are the pressing things that we need to address? Am I and are we and is this institution qualified? Is there something more? Is there a capacity that we've got to reach out and grasp so that we can develop a capability that will put us in a better situational position? Do I or we have time? Do we have time for anything else on our calendar, or really are we stretched to the limit as we are? And do we need to have more people come into this organisation? Importantly, also, what do I have to give up to pursue a collaboration with someone? And am I prepared to give that up? And that might be financial, it might be time, it might be freedom, or it might be status. So I think we need to think about all those things and who can make this work, and what capacity in those people or in that organisation do I or we need to harness? What are the things that we are short of that will really amplify our capability? So really we're talking about, for a surgeon, there are projects that I'm interested in that I'd just like to share some of my experiences with, which are really beyond the operating theatre, which is, if I had to say it, that would be my core business. So I just want to run through a few of these things and just highlight ways in which collaboration has been possible, and we've really been able to have much better results as a result of those things. So this slide reminds me that there's going to be some surgical photos here tonight. So if any of those are likely to offend or put you off, it might be useful just to blank the screen and listen. One of the projects that we're interested in is within cancer biology, and what we want to know is what makes some skin cancers spread and kill people. So there's a collaboration between Marie Ranson and her lab at IMRI in the University of Wollongong, and some of our other partners, Rita Gupta from Royal Prince Alfred, Gopal Iyer from Duke and National Cancer Centre in Singapore, and Jonathan Clark from Lifehouse and the University of Sydney. This is supported by an NH and MRC grant, and really what we know is that cutaneous SCC is the Australian disease, so there's lots of cutaneous SCC, but only 3% of these cancers, and this picture is of a patient of mine who's a 32-year-old, only 3% of them do what this has done, and that is metastasize to this area in the neck. I hope you can see my pointer. So these patients ultimately end up probably getting radical surgery most of the time if we want to save them, and often they then have to have radiotherapy. We know that this disease has an increased death rate, so we really need to get our heads around what's causing this to happen if 97% of these cancers don't do this, but only 3% do. So the idea here is of epithelial to mesenchymal translation, the idea that a cancer on top of the head here would be able to get into the lymphatic system or vascular system. And it does that by changing its appearance from a skin type appearance to more like a blood vessel or lymphatic or connective tissue appearance, make its way to a lymph node or some other organ, and ultimately become a metastatic deposit. So this is the idea that we're interested in. You know, is this something we could adjust or we could understand a bit better? And so one of the ways that we've done this, and we talked about, Gordon, you spoke about Bill supporting some initial fundraising around getting PhD scholarships. Well, we've been supported by the Illawarra Cancer Carers, who are just a community organisation interested in helping out with cancer treatment and research. And they were the first people to give us a leg up to help us out with some funding for whole genome sequencing. So we've looked at a whole bunch of these cancers, both primaries and metastatic deposits. We've done whole genome sequencing really to look at the extent of mutational burden in these tumours, and we know that it's the most mutated cancer that has ever been described. And we've really looked at the amount and the type of mutation that's occurred in these, and really the targets are often the genes that control cell cycle and cell division and cell death. And so we've got now what we think is a fairly good handle on some of the genes and mutations within genes and other regulatory elements of the genome, which are likely to set aside some cancers from others. So there's more work to be done. We're doing plenty of whole genome sequencing. We've done a whole bunch of RNA sequencing. We're looking at the methylome. And the path forward is to establish a difference between those primary skin cancers that spread and kill and those that are indolent. Because what we'd love to do is develop a test at the time of just a primary skin cancer being excised that could predict behaviour and therefore treatment and an appropriate surveillance. So this is a collaboration between some scientists and some clinicians that's really taken a pressing clinical problem that is ours and has come up with a plan for understanding the disease that we have never really understood. So the next one I wanted to talk about is a jaw reconstruction project that Gordon's part of, Jonathan's leading, and it's been sponsored by the Cancer Institute in New South Wales. And here's one of these photos that if you don't like surgery, to look away. So it's the idea is thinking about jaw reconstruction. So you have a patient who has part of their jaw removed. They might have a cancer that's involving the skin. This is all the way through to the tongue here. So it's through the full thickness of the cheek. And how do we reconstruct the jaw here? You know, might be replacing bone, might be replacing skin, might be replacing other things. So currently, and certainly over the last 20 years, we've basically chosen a part of the body we wanted to get some bone from and any other element. So in this case, it's the shoulder blade or scapula. We take a section of the bone, some attached muscle, skin as well, and they all share the one blood supply. So there's an artery and vein here that supply the bone, muscle, and skin around the shoulder blade. We can take that out without too much effect on the patient, and essentially we place it into here and connect the blood vessels onto blood vessels in the neck and to the skin into the area here. And so we would get a result like this, and this is this patient post-operatively. We've got the bone in place. The bone does some of the things we want it to do, but it certainly, you can compare it to the other side, doesn't do all the things we want to do. And so we're sort of interested in finding ways that we might be able to do that a bit better. And this is one of the ways we do that better. So a patient has a tumor in the jaw. We do some planning on the computer. We work out where we're going to make the cuts. We do all this with all of the x-rays attached. We then go to another part of their body. In this case, it's the fibula. And we plan the surgery on that. We plan how we're going to make the cuts, where the blood vessels are, the shape of the bone to be replaced. But again, not really looking the same as the other side. Doesn't have any teeth there, not really the same shape. It probably does the job, that is functionally stable, but is it the best that we can do? And here's part of the problem, hey? The mandible in the middle here has a very particular shape, and it's got a particular function. It's related to teeth. That's the important thing about it. It provides airway, but also the ability to nourish yourself. And here we are trying to rebuild it with a big flat bone like the scapula, or with a long thin bone like the fibula. And really, we probably are barking up the wrong tree, much like my Labrador is perhaps about to do. So we'd like to explore this idea of reconstructing bone without really using bone. So we wonder what is possible there. We wonder whether we could have perfect anatomy. What if we could somehow produce something that gave us perfect anatomy, rather than making do and sort of fashioning a spare part from the body to look like the bone? What if we had something that was biocompatible? Say we could print it up and it was also biocompatible with perfect anatomy. We would also love it to be mechanically durable, for it not to break after a few weeks. We'd love it to have less morbidity than operating on someone's leg or their shoulder blade or their hip. Maybe it could also involve less operating time, so make the anaesthetic shorter. And would it be possible for us to print a shape, a biocompatible shape, that could be ossified in situ? So could we have a patient-specific printed bone matrix for jaw reconstruction wrapped in periosteum? And this is a study that we've done at the University of Wollongong, just with this idea of raising a periosteal flap, in this case, a cadaveric model in the anatomy labs, where we've raised the pericranium from the side of the head with the artery and vein. We've then, mapped that out, just like we were doing surgery in the lab. We've tested the blood flow going to the edges of this, with the idea of potentially using this periosteal free flap, just like that other scapular free flap, for wrapping a biocompatible printed matrix that would be perfect for that patient. So, and then what? What else could we do? Could we have composite structures where we had soft tissue and hard tissue? What if we could involve some movement? What if it was truly bionic? And what about limbs? And what about nerves? This is a patient of mine who had surgery, just talking about nerves, where she'd had an operation which should have to sacrifice the whole facial nerve. So the facial nerve provides movement on that side of the face. So she's got a left normal side of the face and a paralysed right side of the face. So we used some muscle from her leg with its own nerve supply to implant in her mid-face, and then joined it up onto a nerve that she uses to chew with. And so we were interested in seeing whether this is something that we could involve our future research in. So, is this something that we could use over time? And you can see here the right side of the face is paralysed. She can't really move it at all, but can she move her mid-face with this bit of muscle that we've taken from her leg and connected to a nerve in her jaw? So sure enough, shows that we can do things with nerves as well as with bone. So she can't do that side, and she's just smiling. So it gives a reasonably effective smile just by taking a bit of muscle from somewhere else in someone who would be otherwise completely paralysed. So that's a collaboration in surgery that we're thinking about, as well as one in cancer biology. So we've got surgeons, and we've got bionics experts, and we're thinking about the possibilities. Another area of collaboration we're thinking about is in surgical practice, about rationalising workflow. And Shirley Agostino, who's a professor from the University of Wollongong in education, and is collaborating with two surgeon mates of mine, Matt Beck and James Wykes, who are surgeons at Wollongong, with the Agency for Clinical Innovation in New South Wales Health Pathology, parts of New South Wales Health. So we want to know how surgeons order blood tests, and is there a way that we could make that better? So what we did is we did a study at Wollongong Hospital where we blinded all the other teams, and we just said, okay, our little team at the end of every day are going to get together, go through every patient, and have really just a case conference about them to work out which are the right blood tests to order. Because we know that we probably tend to overorder blood tests, and we do this in a way that's defensive. So the most junior person in the team has to work out which blood tests we're going to order. So they will have a response where they might say, okay, I'm going to order everything so I don't get caught out because I don't want to get into trouble. So often we will be ordering blood tests that are inappropriate, or that if we had more experience or more knowledge, we just wouldn't order. So we blinded that to the other teams. We didn't tell them what we were going to do, and we compared it for that period, normalised to the complexity of patients and the number of patients and days on call, as well as to what we ordered a year ago for the same calendar months. And what we found is a few interesting things. We found that the increased learning at the end of every day, that opportunistic learning was measurable. We found that we saved 16% in our pathology ordering compared to both our cohort and also the previous year. And we wondered whether we could actually change practice in this space, and whether we could change the way people think about, as junior medical officers, how to justify tests. And we also wonder whether that might be an enduring effect. So we're increasing the size of that study. We're going to look for funding around this to think about just how do we practice and how do we educate as surgical leaders. So I hopefully we'll have a chance to report that. The next thing I wanted to talk about is another project, which is just an example of collaboration, which is around youth suicide. So, and this is with Michelle Townsend from the University of Wollongong and Emory, and Gordon, and one of Gordon's collaborators from Dublin City University, Margaret McCall, and her team over there. So we're really interested, as all of us, we're really interested as a community about youth suicide, and we're interested, well, who are the at-risk groups? So we know that same-sex attracted people, transgender people, Aboriginal Australians, and in particular, young Aboriginal men are particularly in high-risk groups. And, we've seen around us, and really came to a crux last year, in particular with that spate of suicides that really occurred around COVID time, particularly in Kiama. And that really sort of got us thinking about, well, what are we doing as a medical fraternity about this, and as a research fraternity around trying to understand some of these questions. And we've all been touched by suicide. We all know someone who's taken their life, and we've all thought about the lost years that, and all of the regrets that we as a community have about that. And we wondered what we can do about it. So we started asking, along the lines of our biomarkers in cancer project, were there any biomarkers we could use to look at to assess risk of youth suicide? And is there a way that we could predictably, or we could predict suicidal behaviour in young people? And because we knew that if we knew that someone was at risk of suicidal behaviour, we would just sit with them. We would just stay with them until that passed, or until we could resolve it. But at the moment, the system can't handle that responsibility, because we just don't have the capability or the numbers of people to look after everyone who's at risk, because that number seems to increase all the time. So we wondered were there any biomarkers which might say to us, in a high-risk population, here is a person that is at more risk than normal. And would this change the way that we cared for people in those high-risk groups? So Michelle and Gordon and Margaret and myself are thinking about a biomarker. Well, we're undertaking a biomarker of risk of suicide study where we're looking at numerous biomarkers and wondering whether we can, in high-risk groups, combine a mood diary with a polymetric analysis of biomarkers, including sweat and saliva, including heart rate, sleep, blood pressure, oxygenation, and a whole range of things that we will be able to measure. And that's being undertaken through IMRI. Because what we would love to do, and in particular the guys from Dublin have a really sensitive multi-channel sensor for looking at sweat analysis, and that combined with a project that Michelle was already involved in looking at saliva, looking at both electrolytes but also potentially hormonal effects, including dopamine, including other cortisol and other stress hormones. So that's one of these things that I think Bill Wheeler would have been interested in, because it's outside of our usual area of interest, but it's everybody's interest. It's the community's interest. So, and we've got experts like Gordon and Margaret and Michelle, and we've been able to come together to really assess, well, how could we put all our brains together if we really wanted to attack this important problem to us? And finally, I just wanted to talk about another collaboration that's really pretty topical. I don't know whether any of you have heard of COVID. It's a virus that's currently sweeping the world, and we at Wollongong Hospital have had a little bit of involvement with that. So if we think about where we were in February 2020, we just started hearing about COVID, and we were unaware of the effect of it initially, and we sort of only just now coming to terms with a lot of that. So I really just wanted to touch a little bit on some COVID-induced collaboration. In February of 2020, we were dealing with a health system and a way of behaving in hospitals that had never lived really through a pandemic at all, because we'd forgotten all those lessons. So we had this induction of a whole lot of activity that we needed to come to terms with to modify the way we did things. So in particular around personal protective equipment, we collaborated with Gordon and his teams, making some face shields for us. They were printed up. Gordon said to us, can we help out in any way? Do you guys need any help with any equipment over there? And actually we did need some help with some face shields, because initially we thought this was mainly a splash problem rather than an aerosol problem. And of course it's both. COVID is both in that high risk setting. So we collaborated around the production of face shields. They were printed up, they were workshopped, they were prototyped, and ultimately they were supplied. And they were used in the clinical space and are still used today. Another important collaboration we had was with local businesses, and this is Drew from MDR Glass. So we really were found out pretty quickly that we're in a built environment that wasn't really that useful for us. It posed a lot of threats to us. We didn't have any negative pressure rooms. We didn't have any capacity for dealing with ventilation, because all modern buildings these days are all shut. The old Darwin hospital just had big open windows. And if you go to PNG, they won't have any problems in their hospital because the air goes through one ward from one side to the other. So that ventilation is not an issue, but we don't have any of that in new buildings. So that was one of the other things that we looked at, and Trevor Gardner, who's worked with us, has done a great amount of work there and has really transformed the built environment of all our acute care spaces, intensive care, the COVID wards, emergency departments across the whole region. And really another way in which we've had to collaborate is we've had to think about clinical leadership and advocacy. Clinical leadership giving advice to executive and to the ministry, but also to our colleagues, and advocacy for things that really count now in the clinical space, where clinical leaders have just a different insight and have a little bit of social capital that they can trade off for getting some benefits and gains in the clinical space. So the other thing that COVID has given us a chance to do is to reassess our priorities, and we do that on a daily basis, at least in our hospital, but also to cultivate new partnerships. So I think in a lot of ways we've been pretty fortunate. The last way I want to talk about is just with regard to collaboration with the community. Illawarra Cancer Carers are a great example of a way in which a local group has supported millions and millions of dollars of collaboration and research within our local community. And another organisation I'm involved with is Head and Neck Cancer Australia, and they're really reaching out further in a space where there was no education resources for head and neck cancer patients. And now there's a really successful collaboration of many different specialties across the country, purely focused on education and resourcing of patients. So we ought to think about not just within our research and care and spheres of immediate influence, but actually reaching out to the community that we care for as well. So what has all this taught me so far, and hopefully I've got a little bit further to go, is that I don't think we should take any opportunities for granted. And if there's an opportunity in front of you should take it. Sometimes I think simple questions can be meaningful and can provide a meaningful way to progress a clinical problem. I think it's always good to open my eyes to those people around me, because we've got so many experts in our local area that can help us out. And it's really enlightening when we open our eyes to that. And the other thing is that pressure is a real privilege, I reckon. And when I'm under pressure, I try to remind myself of that and to realise that, well, it would be a lot worse if I didn't have any timelines and I wasn't being pushed to do something. So as Ferris Bueller says, I mean, life moves pretty fast. And if you don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss it. And I think we should all learn from that. So thanks very much for indulging me. I can stop sharing there, Gordon. And sorry to run over time if I did there, Sam.
No worries. Thanks, Bruce. And thanks for some amazing insights into projects like, as I think you emphasized a few times, just couldn't happen or couldn't progress without building those collaborative links to do that. I just encourage people, if you have a question, just to put it in the chat box or just to raise your hand on the screen, and Sam will keep an eye on that. And I might just kick it off, Bruce. You mentioned in terms of deciding when and how to build collaborations, to consider what do I have to give up. I think that's a really important question, and I think in general it's an investment of energy and resources in building collaborations, isn't it? And that sometimes the actual outcomes can be delayed a little bit, but they will be much more significant in that longer term. I'd just be interested in your comments on that, because I think it's something that particularly younger researchers have to grapple with all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of think that unless I'm prepared to invest a part of me, whether it's time or money or emotional in a project, then, I mean, do I really expect to get anything meaningful out of it? I mean, I think you get what you put into it, but it's not always appropriate to do that. And I still don't know how to say no very well. People say no to me all the time, but I don't really know how to say no very well. And it would do me well to learn that, because you can't possibly be involved in everything you could potentially be involved in, because you'll dilute your effort. And I just think that unless I'm prepared to put time and effort into something, then I shouldn't really expect a return on it. And probably that applies to the whole of life. But yeah.
Well, I think it's a good thing to think about right up front, as you said, rather than just stumble into those things, because it is a commitment, and it can only be successful with true commitments. I've got a question beamed in here from Ireland, Bruce. Thanks for an amazing talk. Do you think we need to include more diverse content, clinical challenges, for example, in undergraduate science courses? How do we shorten the life cycle for translators?
I think that's really, I guess, Robert, what you're asking there is, how do we stimulate people to really start thinking about the challenges in front of them? And I think, I'm probably going to say something that is not popular, but if we're saying how do we get people involved in research, I just think we shouldn't be doing that, because I don't think everyone should do research. And I never intended to get into research. It was just that I had some really good examples around me, like Jonathan Clark and others, who basically dragged me along, and then I had patients coming through the door and people that I knew that had clinical problems that were so urgent that I couldn't actually sleep at night if I didn't get involved in looking at some of the solutions. So I think that what we need to do is, if we're talking about an undergraduate science or medicine or any of those things, I just think we need to make problems as realistic and as tangible as possible. And I think that having scientists in the clinical space and clinicians in the science space just amplifies the relevance of those, of each side to each other. And it's difficult to bridge that divide because there's usually a geographic divide and there's certainly a cognitive divide. Whenever I go to a scientific meeting, I can't understand any of the words. But I mean, if we think about how we're going to stimulate, really, because what we want to do as a group is to get some answers. I think the best way the best way that I've seen of doing that is to work together and just to stimulate inquiry through people being able to really imagine what the possibilities are. And it's a little bit like that jaw reconstruction project. Well, what could we do? You know, because you know that in 50 years' time, long after we're all dead, we're going to be implanting biologicals that have spontaneous function. We're never going to be back here like we are in the Stone Age. So why can't we ought to dream about the impossible now, and we ought to be encouraging our juniors to just not be satisfied with mediocrity, I think. Don't know whether that answers the question, but it answers something.
No, I think it's very, very good insights. Bruce, just the second bit of that, I would like to just as a last question, if there's no others on the screen, Sam, is there any I'm missing?
No, that's it so far.
Okay, but just shortening that translational life cycle, you know, I mean, how do we make that more effective in terms of, and I know there's no simple answer to this, but you know, there are all amazing developments in scientific laboratories and just making that connection into medical science. So I'm sure we could do it better.
Yeah, I think it's got to be funded if we're serious about it. And we've got to be prepared to, prepared to quarantine time and effort from people who would otherwise needing to be doing other things to make ends meet, and just say, you know what, we as a society or as a university or as a local health district are going to invest in this person or this group or this capacity or this effort so that we can concertina those timeframes and mean that, you know what, we don't have to have them being distracted by anything else. In medicine, it's a bit different because we want people to maintain a clinical relevance. But if we're just relying upon an energy and individuals rather than investing in a program like from a big grant or whatever, but we don't do this very well in Australia, and I feel like we are losing time and losing advantage if we don't adequately fund our best minds to be spending time to start thinking about answers to our most pressing questions. And I think that's just the best way. Give people some brain space where they can just sit and think around problems, and they're not worrying about paying their rent or how they're going to get to work tomorrow. That's all been taken care of by a system that says, actually, we believe in you and we want you to help us. Because we're the taxpayers, hey, we're the society. We want the smartest people doing work to translate a lab-based or an early solution into a meaningful change in the clinic or a meaningful change in the community health sector. I think that's what's got to happen. So, yeah,
totally agree. I think it's a resource-intensive activity, and it needs to be resourced.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
So thanks again, Bruce, for your talk. And look, if anyone has any other questions, I'm sure you could email Bruce or any other comments going forward. This is all about connections and connectivity and keeping those connections with the community as we progress all of our research. So on behalf of everyone, a huge thank you to Bruce. And just moving forward on the program then, we have last year's winner of the Bill Wheeler Award, Grishmi, who's just going to give us a brief update on her research. She's done an amazing job in her PhD. Very exciting research that's directly relevant to clinical connections and the clinical translation, and we always have a view to that, even in these early stages of PhD students' research. So without any further ado, I'll hand over to Grishmi.
Thank you, Gordon. Hello, everyone. It's an incredible honor, and I'm really happy to be here again as a part of the Bill Wheeler event. My PhD in UOW focuses on fabricating coil antennas for the cochlear implants. Antennas in the cochlear implants are used for wireless charging of the implant, and I particularly use additive manufacturing methods, including printing, to fabricate these devices using biocompatible materials. Now, just to give you an idea what my devices actually do, so I have a little video here. So you can see that is a transmitter module that sends out wireless signal, and these are my fabricated coils. So when I put an LED there, I complete the circuit, and my coils, they actually pick up the wireless signal and lights the LED. Now, this is the labor of my PhD, and I'm really very proud of this work. My work forms a big part of my life, and it kind of defines who I am today. Being the recipient of the 2020 Bill Wheeler Award has been an incredible, well, it's been a life-changing journey for me, actually. It's one of the biggest achievements of my PhD career, and last year, when I was very down, it helped me a lot. So last year, April 2020, my father passed away, and my life took a very different turn. It was all very dark, and my heart was very heavy that time. So it took me a lot of time to actually stand up again, to accept the reality, to come back to work. But then, you know, the little things became more difficult. Talking to people was difficult. I became more scared, more hesitant in a way. And then there was COVID, making me all very careful. And that was the time when I decided, okay, I need to stand up again. So I took small steps, and one at a time, you know, learning, relearning everything in life, and just coming back to work. And I think Bill Wheeler Award was one of those steps. And I would really like to thank my PhD supervisor, Shao, for helping me take that step. While writing the application last year, I kind of, well, it gave me a fresh perspective of the work I was doing. It wasn't exactly just innovating this existing technology of the cochlear implant, but actually making the implant more affordable, making it more available to all the people who needed it. And that realization there, I kind of found my way. You know, it kind of felt that it wasn't just research that we were doing, we were actually making a difference there. So I started there, and somehow it motivated me to work further, to keep on moving further. And I would really like to thank the Bill Wheeler Award, as well as the community behind it, for helping me, for moving me from that point to where I am today. I would also like to thank my supervisors, Gordon and Steve, for helping me, for giving me this wonderful opportunity to work on this incredible project here. And I know that it's not exactly easy, and in research, and especially the results are not exactly very immediate, but it just makes a difference, and it makes you feel good. I would like to thank the team at ACES, UOW, and IPRI for all their help and support. I don't think I could have done much without your help last year. And finally, I would like to thank my mother, my sister, and especially my father, because it's because of them that I'm here. It's been after a tough time last year, but I'm really glad where I am right now. And I would really thank the Bill Wheeler Award, especially for helping me to move on from where I was. The award, I initially initially planned on doing a month-long internship at Cochlear Limited, my industry collaborator on my project. But with COVID and the restrictions, well, things are still in the process and things are still in plan. So I'll be updating on that soon, I guess. And well, thank you very much to the entire community for having this event. You kind of helped me in a place when I was very low, and I'm really very thankful. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Grishmi. So, and you should be proud of the output of your research. It's been, like you say, an incredible journey. Research is not always easy, and of course, research is carried out by normal people that have other things going on around them all the time as well. So that's why that community support, as I said right at the start of our evening tonight, is really important to researchers. And it's something that Bill enthused in people when he came to visit our laboratories. His enthusiasm in talking to young researchers really lit up the place every time he came to visit, and just reaffirmed all of our researchers, but especially our younger researchers, that what they were doing and are doing is important, and that it's worth getting through those challenges in research, because the outcomes can be significant and can be important to a lot of people. So well done, Grishmi, and thank you for your update. Great stuff. And I think I'm going to hand over now to Trevor Phyllis at the Kiama Rotary Club. So it's over to you, Trevor.
Thank you very much, Gordon. Thank you, and good evening, everyone. As the current president of Kiama Rotary, it gives me great pleasure to be part of this important symposium, one that we've been on within the Kiama community and on our agenda for many years, and it's a real pleasure to be here. For the past 70 years, Kiama Rotary has had a very proud history of making a contribution to the community, both of the Illawarra and beyond. But we've always got a strong focus on supporting the youth in our regions through various mechanisms. And one such mechanism is via the Bill Wheeler Award. As you probably gathered, Bill was a very valuable member of our Rotary Club prior to his passing in late 2007. And fortunately, through his connection with UOW and particularly with Graham Clark, and now through the annual Bill Wheeler Award to a student involved in bionics research, his legacy of giving back to the community continues, and we're very proud to be part of that. As has already been noted, Bill's a very active member of the Illawarra community and took a keen interest in the new bionics research at the university. And we're very proud to have supported the work in bionics over a number of years now through many donations in the past. And we're very privileged to once again to be involved. It's been a tough year for Kiama Rotary in terms of putting our funds together and many cancellations, but we've been able to again support the award and the work at the Centre of Excellence to make a donation of $1,000 towards that work, and we're very great to be able to do that. We're very happy to do that, so we're very pleased. In honour of Bill, each year the Bill Wheeler Award is presented to an outstanding University of Wollongong Bionics student at this event, and a prize of $2,000 is awarded to the applicant who best communicates the social impact of their research and how the prize will benefit from their work. So Unfortunately, Bill's wife, Lexi Wheeler, is an apology tonight, and Lexi would normally want to present this award, but she has asked me on her behalf to announce the winner. So on behalf of Lexi, it gives me great pleasure to be able to announce that the winner of the 2021 Bill Wheeler Award is Jeremy DeNoro. So congratulations, Jeremy. Jeremy is a PhD candidate who is researching patient-specific implants through 3D printing. Jeremy was able to best describe his research, its social impact, and how it will help to make a difference, which is something dear to the heart of our Rotary. So our congratulations go out to Jeremy. And Jeremy, would you like to say a few words, please? Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Trevor. I'll just share some slides. I just put together a quick presentation just to show everyone else my work. That should be working. Sam, are we good?
Yep, all good.
Okay. Yeah, thanks again, Trevor. My name is Jeremy, and I'm a third-year biofabrication PhD student at Wollongong University's Innovation Campus. And my work involves 3D printing methods for tissue engineering. So specifically, my research aims to address bone-related diseases and illnesses. They're expected to cost the Australian government over $3 billion by the end of next year. It's not just a government issue though. With a growing aging population, our longer life expectancy, and a shift towards sedentary lifestyles, it means these bone-related issues aren't going anywhere. They're actually going to increase. And it'll also impact our quality of life, our community, and our workforces. Current treatments that we use fail to match the specific geometries of bone defects. They struggle to match bone's dynamic and hierarchical structure, where rigid or stiff implants, especially those made from metal that we saw in Bruce's presentation, can actually wear out the surrounding bone and dislodge it, resulting in infection and discomfort for the patient, and sometimes leading to subsequent surgeries. So the research that I've been conducting with collaborators at Queensland University of Technology and Melbourne medical devices company Anatomics has centered around developing a 3D printing method to make implants that are specific to a patient. So how it works is image data is taken from a patient through CT scans or MRIs. A 3D model can then be made. The density of the surrounding bone can be estimated, and a scaffold can be printed out of biocompatible plastics that not only fit into the defected area, but also it matches the strength and the density of the surrounding tissue, and that's really the key part. This ensures stability and longevity for the patient. Thank you to the Bill Wheeler Legacy, the Kiami Rotary Club, and all those in the community for blessing me with such an award. My supervisors, Professor Wallace, Professor Byrne, and Dr. Zillian Yu, all the students who have helped me, the funding bodies, the world-class facilities at Wollongong University, particularly part of ACES, AIM, and IPRI, and also TRICEP. The funding will go directly into registrations for virtual conferences on tissue engineering, and the scientific society memberships for this research can be shared with the broader scientific community here in Australia and internationally. The award also will go towards finishing the bone 3D printer so that I can help Bruce implant a custom jaw into some of his patients. Thank you for listening, and I'm humbled and feel honoured to have received such an award.
Excellent. Thank you, Jeremy, and thank you also, Trevor. So it just leaves me then to wrap up proceedings. I hope you have enjoyed the Bill Wheeler event this year. Of course, we miss not being with you all, because now we would be stumbling out the doors into the foyer to have some drinks with you and celebrate and socialise with our students. But I still think it's been a great event. A special thanks to Kiama Rotary and to everyone who's donated to this award. And you'd be pleased to know that many of the previous winners keep this award alive as well. So thank you to all of those for their donations over the years. Thanks for being with us tonight. Very special thanks to Bruce, our keynote speaker, who really highlighted that importance of collaboration and community engagement. And I think you would have to agree with me having listened to Grishmi and Jeremy, that the future is in great hands, in safe hands, in brilliant hands, innovative hands. And if Jeremy can get that printer up the road to Bruce next week, I'm sure he's going to be very happy about that. So you put yourself in it there, mate.
I'll get it to him by the end of the week.
So look, thanks everyone for attending. Huge thanks to everyone who I've just mentioned, and I hope we can all get together somewhere soon, face to face, and share that glass of wine or beer or soft drink or a cup of tea, and get back to normal. But in the meantime, stay safe and keep working towards those better things that we can deliver for the community. So thank you.